lives and would like to take this opportunity to remind you of a couple rules. All participants must be 21 or older and must wait 30 days after winning a prize to participate in another contest. Once you win, you have 30 days to pick up your prize at the KNTK Studios, 1040 O Street in Lincoln, or your prize will be forfeited. Thank you for participating in our contest, and thank you for listening to 93.7 The Ticket.
Husker Hoops just wrapped up as Williams turns the corner, 2 more into the line, a chance for 3, Bryce Williams. Hustle down to the block, post up, and go to work now on 93.7 The Ticket. And the offensive rebound, Berke Butunjel. The post-game post-up is sponsored by Action Plumbing, Heating, AC, and Electrical, and Lincoln Wall-to-Wall Wine and Spirits.
There's a CJ, same spot, same result. He is red hot. A CJ ahead, half court. Ulis with it, it goes, and it counts. Aaron Ulis with a half court 3.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Well, it's all over but the crying for Nebraska. It's 114-111 with a few seconds to go. Ohio State headed to the free throw line. Welcome into the post-game post-up sponsored by Lincoln Wall-to-Wall Wine and Spirits, as well as Action Plumbing, Heating, AC, and Electrical. We will let you know when this game officially goes final. I'm Austin Orman. My partner in crime, Eric Strickland, hops on the stream. Stricky, looks like John Mobley Jr. just put Ohio State up by 2 possessions with 3 seconds to go. So I think we're gonna call this one pretty much in the bag for the Buckeyes. Yet again, another missed opportunity for this Nebraska team, Strick. Let's just start at the beginning. We'll work our way through it. Despite, Nebraska putting up 111 points in this game, you don't want to say offense is the problem, but a couple things stand out, Strick, where it could have been prevented. Number one, Nebraska scored only 8 points in the first 8 minutes, found themselves down by 11 points to start with. They didn't find a way to get off to the quick start that they needed to. So once again, Nebraska had to expend more energy to come back. Never really extended the lead. In fact, I think the Huskers' largest lead, it was by 5 points in overtime. And then, of course, free throws, right? Andrew Morgan on the day misses the most. He ends up 4 for 7 or 5 of 8 at the free throw line. Ohio State missed more free throws than Nebraska did, but they also hit 12 more of them as well. So there it is, 116-114 the final. Bryce Williams gets a deep 3, 43 points in the game for Bryce Williams. That should take him past Eric Pietkowski's school scoring record with that performance. But Strick, there it is again, 4-game losing streak for Nebraska. Your first initial reactions to this one?
Yeah, they showed grit and fight, and there was some unfortunate circumstances throughout this game. Many opportunities throughout this game. I think a lot of it comes down to opportunities to secure, whether it be a rebound or there's defensive lapses where you just let a guy catch and one jab and he's at the basket. It was just a lot of those types of situations. I'm talking about when you have a lead in overtime. That's when you've got to probably be at your most solid, phase and mentality as far as defensively. Understanding how to close out short, who you're guarding, things like that matter. But here's the thing. Here's what it ultimately comes down to. Ohio State made plays. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And they did what they were supposed to do at home. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to, and that's make plays when it matter and get a stop when it matters. And now I will say that it looked to me, as Brian Oling says on the YouTube stream, there were definitely some calls that's why you don't ever want to leave it in the hands. We talk about that in boxing. If you're a champion or you're trying to go in and beat a champion, you don't ever want to leave it in the hands of the judges. You want to put on the performance so that way they don't get an opportunity to do that, to hose you. And they got home. They got home calls late when it mattered. And there's a thing when I used to referee that we talk about, Austin, and that was we don't get paid for we don't get paid for extra overtime. So there's some times where there are situations where you will give deference to a team, and it looked like they gave a lot of deference to the home team, especially that play on a season. It's like football in that situation. There's no way you turn that call around unless it's definitive that it went out on him, and there's no way that you can say that was a definitively went out on a season. Matter of fact,
and
it
it
didn't look like it.
Play for Ohio State.
Yeah, it didn't look like it at all. So there's that, and then there's a couple of times where guys from Nebraska drove the basket, got bumped. A flagrant one call on a basketball play. I mean, like that's the thing I talk about, man. When you're reffing a game, yeah, the rules are the rules, but you got to be able to look at it from also a basketball standpoint. And there's no attention, and because we've seen guys get hit in the head. Let's be honest about that. Where, it's just a common foul. Right. Because it's a basketball play to a common foul. He didn't lift his arm up to try. Come on, man. That's crazy. But listen, ultimately, again, they did what they were supposed to do at home. Nebraska gave it what they got, and they just came up short tonight.
That they did. Let's get the ref chatter out of the way before we get into what went right and what went wrong for Nebraska tonight. Real quick. That's a freaking technical in any game all the way down to the freaking Pee Wee leagues. When a guy slams the ball in anger and frustration, that is a technical foul. If you're going to give all that stuff that you're giving flagrants, if you're going to go by rules, that's a rule. No guy should be able to slam the ball down. He did it twice. Once to himself. That's legal. Slam frustration to your. Then the second one where the ball goes above his head towards the rim, that's a technical foul all day long, and you let that one go. That's what I'm talking about. The refs look like at the end of the day that they were just ready to go home because that's a technical foul. And that's one too, Strick, where if you're not going to call the technical for him slamming it and catching it because that's the letter of the law, okay, fine. It didn't get out of his control. But for the second one, where he doesn't catch the ball, it goes even higher. That's intentional. That you're not calling
automatic.
That, right? That's not heat of the moment. That's just a plain and simple missed call. Overturning the Asijan one was absolutely egregious. So the Bryce Williams, flagrant call in the first half at the end. Bryce Williams got hit in the mouth. They didn't take a second to review that one and give Bryce Williams free throws. But when Devin Royal tries to duck underneath the box out, Bryce has his arm up like he's trying to get his forearm to his chest. Royal ducks down. So then the hand hits him in the face. That's a flagrant one, despite there wasn't any movement backwards from Bryce, nothing discernible. But Royal sold it well. He got the call, and that ends up being that. So there were some atrocious decisions. They led to probably 8 or 10 extra points for Ohio State in this game, all at critical junctures. And the Asijan overturn, I think, was probably the worst call. But Strick, in the moment, I was going to say the worst call was the flagrant one on Bryce Williams, because at that point, Nebraska was on a 7-0 run. Ohio State hadn't made a field goal in a couple and a half minutes, and that call got Ohio State back on the board, and they got the ball. They ended up getting 4 points out of that possession when Nebraska was looking to run the other way and get back on the board. That is a momentum-changing play. That is a game-changing play, and it's unfortunate that that's the way it went for Nebraska. But now that we have the ref chatter out of the way, let's talk about the players. Let's talk about the game here for just a little while. Got to start with Bryce Williams. 43 points for him on 16 of 29. Hit big threes to start both overtimes. Took a couple late contested ones in each overtime. But Strick, I'm left feeling a pit in my stomach because the vibe I get from this game is Bryce McGowan's on the road at North Carolina State back in December, where Bryce McGowan's was clearly Nebraska's best player in that game. They would clear out, run high pick and roll with him, and I think Derek Walker, he would get downhill. But Bryce McGowan's has a chance to win the game for Nebraska in the first overtime, misses a free throw, the game goes on. And same thing kind of happens for Bryce Williams there at the end of, I think that was at the end of regulation, where he did get downhill. He did get the foul call, and I thought he hitched it. I thought he thought about it just a little too much at the last second. And you don't want to put this game on Bryce Williams, right? Some of the turnovers that got credited to him, I don't think were really on him. 6 of 7 at the free throw line is still a pretty good mark. But man, you had it drawn up for Bryce Williams to have his moment, where we talked about it in other games where, yeah, Bryce hit the shot to tie the Iowa game and send it into overtime. But Bryce Williams has passed out of those opportunities, right, to get other guys looks. It felt like it was about to be Bryce Williams' turn. It was set up for him to give Nebraska the lead, and Ohio State didn't have any timeouts and had a really disjointed possession. They don't get it. They go to overtime, but man, it all set up for Bryce Williams to have his kind of redemptive moment, and it just didn't fall.
Yeah. Here's the thing. That game should have been over. You know, you did what you were supposed to do when you're on the road. It's kind of like a field goal kicker, right? You did everything you could do as a team, as an offense. You get the ball into range, and I'm not talking about a 50-yarder. I'm not even talking about a 40-yarder. You got him within 35 yards. You as a kicker, this is what you do all day long. Everything is good. Snap is good. Hold is good. Laces out, and you shank it. Bryce, who is a 90-plus free throw shooter, you're on the road, and you miss the free throw. And look, I don't like to put the blame on, but that's stuff that you can control. You do that, you take everything out of their hands, of the referees and all of that, and you going home with a victory. You're riding on that plane with a smile on your face. It's unfortunate, but he did. He came back, he redeemed himself, put them up by 7. And then defensively again, you let them get 2 great looks on threes, got them back in the game. And then there was some rebounds that there was one rebound specifically that, they go up and they attack. In that instance, everybody and their moms need to be somewhere in that paint hunting rebounds. And I watched Jawan watch a guy, especially when there's a one of your teammates that is at a disadvantage. And you're a guy that's strong, physical, can get in there and mix it up. You go in there and put your body in it. He stood and watched it, and they ended up securing a rebound. So there's little things like that. I showed you one instance where I sent that picture to you where I was boxing out Yao Ming. And
not Yao Ming, guys, that one.
The big Yao Ming, the big wall of China. Yeah. And my thing is, Connor's got to be better. If you're at a disadvantage, don't turn your back to a stronger, more physical guy. Don't do it. Side, create space with side, strong forearm, or face guard him. Whatever you do, if you're at a disadvantage, you don't let your guy get to it. If someone else gets it, cool. That you do your job on a specific guy. If you've got a face guard, physical, and just move wherever he is, you got to do that, because there was a couple of rebounds, a couple of fouls that he gave up because of that reason. So again, there's just these little itty bitty things that just add up over time, and it causes you to lose a close game on the road.
Let's go ahead and pause 10 quick seconds for station identification here on 93.7 The Ticket.
This is Lincoln's home for sports talk on the FM dial. Also online at theticketfm.com. On the internet, KNTK FM Firth, 93.7 The Ticket.
Thanks to everyone who's staying up with us here. Big thanks to Action Plumbing, Heating, AC, and Electrical, as well as Lincoln Wall-to-Wall Wine and Spirits. Let's get some reaction here from the text line and from the comment section. Let's start with Cubsker. Cubsker, you're a loyal blockhead. Appreciate you chiming in here to postgame as well. Gubsker says he's at a loss for words. Everyone stepped up. Bearcade did all right, but man, every time Nebraska found something, it seemed like there was a ticky-tack call. I'm going to push back on Bearcade. Strick, I think he continues to struggle since coming back from that ankle injury. He is, I believe, still 1 of 18 from the floor in the last 3 games since he's been back from injury. That's Michigan, Minnesota, and Ohio State. He got toasted by Devin Royal for some pretty key points late in that game. He doesn't look like himself. He looks like a shell of himself. He is not a productive player for Nebraska. When they inserted him into the lineup after, I think it was Hoiberg picked up his 5th foul there in overtime, I didn't have a good feeling. Bearcade Boyiktanjel was a problem for Nebraska tonight. That's a guy that went 2 of 4 at the free throw line, missed his 2 shots from 3, only had 2 rebounds, and 5 fouls in 19 minutes. I don't know what Bearcade Boyiktanjel was doing out there tonight. It was not playing basketball, though.
Yeah, he didn't look like he was engaged at all. I mean, offensively, I mean, you get Morgan cut into the basket and you literally throw it 2 feet in front of him. That
causing you to use your one timeout in overtime.
The one timeout you have.
Period. 13 seconds in.
Yeah, man. I don't know. And this is where it's going to be a problem for them because they're not able to go with any depth into their bench. You know, they struggle offensively at times, and then finally you got a season going and you got guys going, and they needed that. You know, that's the only thing that really kept them in this game. Bryce did what he could. The guys did what they could. Morgan, I got to give him credit. He kind of came alive in the second half, and man, it's difficult. But here's what it comes back to, Austin. They made it difficult for themselves, and Ohio State did what you didn't do, and that's take care of home. And so I got to give them credit. I've got to give them credit for doing what they were supposed to do. They realized where they're at. They're the last 4 in. One of those 2 are going to step forward and stay in the mix. And now you're pretty much in a position where you're going to have, because Iowa game outside of the win does nothing for you. And you're going to have to go into the Big Ten tournament. You're going to be in the gauntlet. You're going to probably have to win 2 games. And that's the pressure you put on yourselves. That's the pressure you put on yourselves. Now it's up to you.
Let's keep going through some comments and questions here. Justin Rogge, did Braxton Mia get in trouble? Not that we've heard of. That just
looked like a back. Looked like something he had around his back or something on his something with his back. It looked like.
And this isn't a good matchup for Braxton Mia.
No.
Right. So I think that was more matchup based than anything. Lemon says Fred Hoiberg needs to say something about the officiating post game. Fred Hoiberg will probably be tactful about it, I'm sure. I'm curious to hear from Fred Hoiberg after the game.
One last thing too, man, is even when they were down the way that they were, whoever the ball-headed ref was, he was calling everything against Nebraska at the end, and all Ulis was doing was moving his feet, and the guy calls. I'm like, come on, man. And also, it looked like that one attack by Royal. It looked like Morgan got that. And here's the thing. Remember, I'm a referee. High play at the rim. The trail official, which is the guy underneath the basket, should never make that call. That's an outside call. There's no way you're going to be able to see what's going on, because guess what you got to look through if you're that trail official? You got to look through. You got to look through the side of the backboard and up at the rim. That's not your call. And so for you to make that call as well is something as a referee is like, it's wild. It's wild to me. Though that's a discipline play. I would never have made that call, especially just for discipline purposes. You lose credibility with doing stuff like that.
I will say to Brett's point here. It is not the same ref. Different guys reffing this crew. The one carryover that Nebraska's seen recently was Kelly Pfeiffer, who I didn't think inserted himself in the game that much, but it's not the same guy Nebraska's been seeing. I do want to get to Dave's comment here, Strick. On YouTube, Dave says, this is one game where lack of depth caught up to Nebraska. I said it to some people in a couple different group chats. Even though Sam Hoiberg wasn't overly effective for Nebraska tonight, the vibes weren't good when he fouled out. Raleigh Wooster wasn't overly effective. He was doing okay on Bruce Thornton, but again, Bruce Thornton's a darn good player. When Raleigh Wooster went out with those fouls and okay, but Nebraska was rolling with the lineup that brought it back against Minnesota. And we'll get to that here in a little bit. But when Sam Hoiberg went out, even if the stat line loss wasn't crippling, the vibe shifted when Sam Hoiberg went out. It's one of those intangibles that you can't necessarily measure all the time. That happened. I mean, Berke Buchtenjel fouled. I'm like, okay, thank goodness. I mean, he's been a net negative for Nebraska. I got to see if I can find his plus minus. Berke Buchtenjel was a team worst -6. Now, in a game like this, there's probably not going to be a huge swing, but -6 in a 2-point loss, that says a lot. But to Dave's point, where the lack of depth caught up to them, even if you account for 3 guys fouling out, the fact that Nebraska, when it was still trying to make its comeback and hang in the game, Nebraska was relying on the same lineup it was against Minnesota. It didn't feel like it could give any of those guys really anything resembling a breather. They had to roll with that lineup of Hoiberg, Esijan, Williams, Gary, and Morgan. That's the group that made the run yet again for Nebraska. And on the one hand, maybe that needs to be Nebraska's starting lineup moving forward. It's looked the best over the last couple of games. But Strick, Nebraska is now 30 games into the regular season. It has 1 regular season game to go. And even in a game like this with foul trouble, you didn't feel confident about anyone coming in off that Nebraska bench and making a difference. Aaron Eulis had one nice play with a tip in and one on it. But Berke Buchtenjel getting the start didn't do anything. Andrew Morgan was up and down. You mentioned you didn't see Mia, but you also didn't get any minutes from even like a Gavin Griffiths, who could have been a developmental project. You only saw Cale Jacobson when it was far too late, and that wasn't really in any sort of impact moments at all. The fact that Nebraska is down to really 6 guys it can trust, it has to play 7. If you're a tournament team with high-level aspirations, that's fine. But Nebraska's relied on the same guys for 2, 3, 4 weeks in a row, if not longer anymore. And you could just tell Nebraska ran out of gas again a little bit physically and mentally at the end, because they haven't been able to find more than 6 or 7 guys that can give them even one quality stretch of 4-minute basketball at a time.
Yeah, it looked like they tried to give Bryce a break, and there was so much stagnation throughout that game that they weren't able to really even give him a break. They had to come back with him. I think when someone was at the free throw line for Ohio State, and look, they're in good shape. I think they gave it their all, but man, you go into 2-0. That's why it was so important to just, you had that opportunity at regulation to end that game, and and then you get up in the first, and you get up in the first overtime, and a couple of lapses. That team, look, that team's fighting for their life. Mm-hmm. When they're fighting for their life, you tend to make big shots, especially when you're down. Mm-hmm. That's when you tend to focus even on another level, and they did. And to me, that's where I think they got into a little bit of trouble, as they allowed them to get back into the game. And unfortunately, once the game got tight, referees are like, "Oh, we don't want to go into another overtime." I'm telling you, referees, their minds start thinking. They're like, "Yo, we only get paid for regulation. One overtime. We ain't trying to go 3.
Flat fee.
I'm telling you, in their mind, sometimes that happens. You don't want to be on the bad side of that, and that's why it's important, especially if you're on the road, because they don't want to get cursed out walking out of that building, right? So if it's any way or partial, there's going to be some partiality that goes to the home team as opposed to the visiting team.
Someone brought this up. Let's get to what Fred Hoiberg had to say. Justin posted it on YouTube. Fred Hoiberg said, I didn't like the flagrant on Bryce. I thought it was an accidental play. They slam the ball on the ground and it goes above the basket. No call. I don't know. It just bothers me. Running on the sideline on a dead ball inbound, I don't think is allowed either. That's another one, Strick, that I honestly missed because I was in here getting post-game set up.
Yeah, spot. If you move,
you can't move side to
you
side.
can go fatter forward, and you can step to your right or left. But if you move off spot, that's automatic turnover. I'm telling you, they missed a lot. They missed a lot in those overtime sessions. They missed a lot.
They did. And ultimately, that's just part of what ends up costing Nebraska in a 116-114 loss to Ohio State. Let's just run down some differentials here. I know we like to go over that, Strick. Nebraska, 20-28 at the free throw line. Not horrible at 70%, but not good enough in the moments that it mattered. Nebraska shoots 53% overall, except they allow Ohio State to do the same. Nebraska and Ohio State both make 12 threes. Nebraska on 28 attempts, Ohio State on 32, but the Buckeyes got him early and they got him late when it really mattered. Nebraska, 11 turnovers, Ohio State 9, not that bad. Here's the other part, Strick, that kind of surprises me. Nebraska scored 18 points off of 9 turnovers from Ohio State. You normally feel pretty good about that. I didn't think Nebraska had won the rebounding battle. It sure didn't feel like they did, but Nebraska got 26 second chance points in this game. Again, it didn't feel like it, but in a game where you get 44 points off of turnovers and second chances and you lose the game, it goes back to a couple things, Strick. We mentioned a little bit about the slow start that Nebraska got off to, being down 19-8 with only 8 points in the first 8 minutes. And then in closing time, Strick, they lost the threats. Micah Parrish hit a big one. John Mobley hit a big one. And Bruce Thornton. What that proves, yet again, is that Nebraska just doesn't have the perimeter defenders to stay in front of other teams' lead guards in a do-or-die situation. Mobley's really good, right? That's a stud freshman that's going to be playing some good Big Ten basketball again probably next year. And then I think that's an NBA draft caliber guy with the way he's able to shoot the ball. Bruce Thornton is going to make some money playing in Europe. That is a big-bodied guy who controls game flow so well, just an assist shy of a double-double, but he's a little bit more athletic and even stronger than Raleigh Wooster was. And you saw that at times tonight. And then, Micah Parrish hit a couple big ones that you're okay with giving up, but man, he hit them. Nebraska's guys didn't necessarily do that. It's the slow start and then the lack of closers that I think ultimately cost Nebraska tonight, Stricky.
No doubt about it. And here's what's frustrating. I'm just me as a guard. Listen, I don't like to talk down the players because I know they work their tails off, but bruh. And I know it's late. Thank y'all for staying with us, man. For real. I appreciate y'all. But Raleigh Wooster, listen, my boy. I've seen you at least do this 6 times this year. When you're wide open and you shoot an air ball that is like someone opened the door, and it's windy in Lincoln right now and it's windy in Omaha, and so it's like someone you're outside, and you remember on White Man Can't Jump where he says you just got to adjust it just a little bit, or whatever he said, just a little tweak to this. No, listen. There's no way as a high Division I guard that you should be wide open and you don't hit nothing. That's bad. That means you're ineffective. You don't think teams don't see that. Now I can tell you where he is effective, and they need to find out how to get. There's 2 things that I saw that Nebraska needs to do that can help them, right? And I always talk about it. But we've got listeners here and a lot of y'all listening. There were a couple of opportunities where they pushed in that secondary break situation, and they were able to get something before Ohio State was able to get set up. They sometimes get way too many difficult shots. Shout out to Gary, stepped up tonight. Shout out to Bryce. Those 2 have been the most consistent players of the team, and you always need that extra. I've got to give credit. Y'all talk crazy about Little Hoiberg. Sam, y'all talk crazy about him, but he comes, he brings a lot of energy, and he hit some big shots for Nebraska tonight as well when they needed it. But he also, that's just something you can't rely on. He's made some good plays, some good drives, and some good dishes. But they've got to figure out how to use Worcester more with those sideline, because when they have him up top, they can sag off. Like, they don't have to guard him. But this is what little Avery Johnson, because he couldn't shoot either. But the one thing that he could do is when they always work some form of a pick and roll where they would take him off of David Robinson and Tim Duncan, get him to that lower elbow. I mean, off the corner of the three. You know how the 3-point comes up and then it bears off, and then they would run it where he could get tight off of that, where you have to guard, and they were able to find Morgan for a lob. They need to do more of that with Worcester.
You know what it reminds me of, Strick? It reminds me of that inverted sort of, wing pick and roll that Nebraska ran basically for the last 2 months of 22-23 with Griesel and Walker. It's that little wing side pick and roll, and Nebraska, for the most part, has gotten good looks off of that. It did tonight with that one to Andrew Morgan. That's where Raleigh Worcester can be effective, where you're not asking him to step into a 23.5-foot jump shot from three if a team goes under. If you can have Andrew Morgan posted up low, or even have him, trail the play, have Raleigh Worcester back down on the block, and then run that pick and roll condensed with the Sejan in the corner, maybe Gary on the wing, and Bryce Williams up top, one pass away, so the guy can't rake down.
Come off.
Right.
Yeah.
Worcester can take that mid-range, or he should be able to, or take that extra dribble and get to the floater. He got Morgan wide open tonight. Yep. That's been there for Nebraska all year. But again, you pointed out we didn't see that until late into the second half. And then even the one that you're mentioning too, about the play that I think Sejan got open on a slip. He found Morgan on the slip as well. There are moments when Nebraska runs some really good stuff, and you can't throw your breaking ball every pitch. You can't do that. You got to have a fastball. You got to have a base offense. But Nebraska continually, Strick, seems to wait is 2 or 3 minutes too long to go and get itself an easy look like that. Maybe it's other teams snuffing it out. Maybe they're calling it and they're just not getting it. But Nebraska can generate some really good, really simple looks, which leads you to wonder why they don't try to just spam that button for even 2 or 3 more times a game.
Yeah, because you ran it once. Like I would ask that why like when you get situations like that where you've got certain combinations of players on the floor, run specific things that can, once things bog down or get late or whatever, or they have the ball, get to a specific spot to where you can do those certain things with that combination.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how it is, man. Do like the freaking Utah Jazz used to do to us all the time. The Utah Jazz would run one play. If they scored off of it, they're coming right back to that same play. Oh, they got a different until you stop it. We're running the exact same thing 4, 5, 6 times down until you do something about it. And then we'll have a couple of counters, or they had a couple of counters off of it, which then Stockton would come off Malone. We got you with pick and roll. Stockton hits you with a couple of elbow jumpers. And then the next thing you know, Hornacek coming off the end because now the defense is crashing. Hornacek for 3, and you then ran 6 of the same play and got great action off of it. Nebraska goes away from it, and they have to make tough plays. The only reason that they were even really in that game is because Bryce hit tough shots. Jawan hit tough shots. Yeah. They finished tough shots. It wasn't, nothing's easy for Nebraska. Nothing's easy.
Never
easy. Never easy.
Another kind of basketball theory question here, Strick, from 8194. He asks, why does Nebraska run the clock down so much before starting to run action at the end of the game and overtime? Just feel like they could get better possessions running all their stuff. Take people through the mindset of an overtime game, especially when, like in that first overtime, you're Nebraska and you have a 5-point lead with like 2.5 minutes to go.
Yeah, so what they were trying to do is they had a 6-7 point lead, so they were really trying to get the clock down, and what the goal is in those situations is you really want to start your play around round 12 if they're figuring. But here's the problem. Bryce got going, so now they're doubling Bryce, and so you don't really have enough time to get into a secondary action. So once they started doing that, what you want to do is start your play at 16. So now you can get into an extra action on the weak side, but they didn't have enough time to do that. So it caused them to get some bad looks a little bit later in the clock, which they weren't able to complete. So then you want to run your clock a little bit. You want to start your clock on your play around that 15, 16, 17 time frame so that you can get extra action that can help you to hopefully get a good look.
And it looks worse when Ohio State responds by hitting back-to-back threes with again, pretty good ball movement, but Ohio State was playing fast. I don't think Nebraska was playing not to lose in that situation, right? They were doing what they're supposed to do, because if Nebraska had gone quickly and taken the first available decent look and lost the way they did, we're all over them for saying, well, why did you go so fast? It's like the football equivalent of, trying to run a 4-minute drill and hiking the ball with 15 seconds left on the play clock instead of taking it down all the way inside of 5. Where it's tough for Nebraska too, Strick, is that as good as Bryce Williams is, that floor was still cramped. So when you wait that long, you don't have time to run something else. You're okay with Bryce Williams taking some tough shots because he can make them. But I think sometimes we forget just how hard it is sometimes to get your own bucket in that situation, especially when other teams know what's coming, when they're going to throw another body at you. So yeah, you want to get an easier look for Bryce. But Fred Hoiberg has said this multiple times. The lack of other guys and their ability to make a play is really what hurts. If you had one or two other guys that could get their own shot out there on the court, teams would be a little more hesitant to throw it at Bryce, or Bryce would be a little more confident to hit someone else with a pass. But because it was, okay, Nebraska's just going to let Bryce Williams take the air out of the ball and pray to all the basketball gods, the God in heaven, whatever, that it goes in for once, that's not necessarily going to be a winning strategy for Nebraska, even on a night where Bryce scores 43.
Yeah, here's what's crazy, right? This is what, third, fourth game in a row now that they've been within single digits and took a L. It kind of feels like Nebraska football with all those single-digit losses. Now, you're right, man. When it's unfortunate where Bryce Williams is really your only option. Let's just be real about it. Mobley Jr. is someone that, look, they had 4 guys over 20. 4. Mobley, Thornton, Parrish, Royal. And all of them at different points throughout this game, Austin, were able to get some form of the ball where it was time with a matchup issue, get money. And they did. That's your difference between what Nebraska has to look forward to. And when you can just focus on one guy, it's way easier. It's the football equivalent of what how tough it was for Boise State to win, because you're only looking at Genty. We just got to stop him. We stopped Genty. Or what was the guy for Vanderbilt when it came down to it? The quarterback.
Pavia.
Pavia. Be in your lanes. Don't let Pavia get loose. You know what I'm saying? And it's easier to deal with as opposed to having 3-4 options in which to go to, like your boys did in Philly, as to why they beat. They had way more options. They had more options to go to. That's why they were able to win.
We're going to wrap it up here. We'll call it a night here at 11:30 Central Time. Eastrick, appreciate you hopping on post game here. Appreciate the great conversation. State basketball starts tomorrow. I won't need you all show. We'll let you stream in. We'll talk to you for about half an hour or so between games. Sound good, partner?
All right.
That's Eastrick. I'm Austin. Huge thanks to Lincoln Wall to Wall Wine and Spirits, as well as Action Plumbing, Heating, AC, and Electrical. We're out of here for the night. We'll talk to you again tomorrow at 6 in the morning for early break. And then, like I said, high school hoops, wall-to-wall coverage from Pinnacle Bank Arena. Every game being played at the Vault, Nick Sainer will be on the call for. Pray for his vocal cords. Tune in. Thanks to everyone who's going to be sponsoring that. Looking forward to 2 great weeks of state basketball action. We'll bring that your way tomorrow, first game at 9. For Strick, I'm Austin. Early breaks next at 6 in the morning.
As an 18-year-old, I let my mistakes kind of take over my life. I was 0.5 credits away from completing high school,